Today, we are talking about a moment that sent shockwaves across Brussels and far beyond, a moment that many insiders quietly describe as a turning point, the story behind what some are calling EU panic after the Danish decision, and why this single move has triggered intense debate, concern, and reflection across the European Union. To understand why this decision mattered so much, we need to first understand Denmark's unique position inside the EU, because Denmark has always been a member that follows its own path, sometimes closely aligned with the bloc, and sometimes deliberately stepping to the side. Denmark is not new to challenging the EU consensus, and its history of opt-outs and cautious integration has long made it a special case. But this time, the reaction felt different, sharper, and far more anxious than before. The Danish decision did not emerge overnight, and it was not made in a political vacuum, because for months, even years, Denmark has been navigating growing domestic pressure over sovereignty, national control, and the limits of EU authority. Across Danish society, debates have intensified around who ultimately decides policy, Brussels or Copenhagen, and this question has become central to the country's political mood. What triggered alarm in Brussels was not just the substance of the decision, but the message behind it, a message that suggested Denmark was willing to openly test the boundaries of EU unity. EU officials are deeply sensitive to such signals, especially at a time when the bloc is already dealing with internal fragmentation, economic uncertainty, and external geopolitical pressure. The fear inside EU institutions is not simply about Denmark alone, but about the precedent such a decision might set for other member states watching closely. In private conversations, EU policymakers often admit that the greatest threat to the Union is not an external enemy, but a gradual erosion of shared rules from within. Denmark's move appeared to challenge the idea that EU law and collective decisions always take priority, and that is a red line for many in Brussels. The immediate reaction was a mix of surprise and concern, with some EU officials describing the mood as tense, even unsettled, as they tried to assess what this meant for future cooperation. Behind closed doors, there was talk of contagion, not in a medical sense, but in a political one, where one country's defiance could inspire others to do the same. This fear is rooted in recent history, because the EU has already faced similar challenges from member states that questioned judicial authority, migration rules, and budget oversight. Each of those episodes weakened trust, and Denmark's decision reopened those old wounds at a time when the EU was hoping to project stability and unity. From the Danish perspective, however, the decision was framed very differently, not as an act of rebellion, but as a necessary step to protect national interests and democratic accountability. Danish leaders emphasized that their responsibility was first and foremost to their voters, and that EU membership should not mean surrendering all control over sensitive policy areas. This framing resonated strongly at home, where many citizens feel that EU decision-making has become distant and overly complex. In Denmark, there is a widespread belief that cooperation with the EU should be practical and flexible, not rigid and imposed from above. This cultural attitude has always shaped Denmark's relationship with Brussels, but this time it translated into a concrete policy choice that carried serious symbolic weight. The EU panic, therefore, was not about chaos or immediate collapse, but about symbolism, credibility, and the fear of losing authority. When one of the bloc's most stable and pragmatic members takes a step that looks like defiance, it sends a powerful signal that something deeper is shifting. EU leaders worry that such shifts could accelerate calls for renegotiation of EU powers across the continent. In countries already skeptical of Brussels, Denmark's decision was closely analyzed, with politicians and commentators asking whether similar paths could be taken elsewhere. This is where the anxiety truly sets in for the EU, because unity relies not just on treaties, but on a shared belief that the system works for everyone. Once that belief starts to crack, even slightly, it becomes much harder to maintain discipline and cohesion. The Danish case also exposed a growing gap between EU institutions and national political realities. While Brussels often emphasizes long-term integration goals, national governments are increasingly focused on short-term political survival and public opinion. This tension has been building for years, but Denmark's decision brought it into sharp focus. It raised uncomfortable questions about whether the EU current structure can adapt to diverse national priorities without losing its core principles. Some EU officials privately admitted that the Union has struggled to communicate its value effectively to citizens in countries like Denmark. When people do not clearly see the benefits of EU rules, they become more open to challenging them. The Danish government capitalized on this sentiment, presenting its decision as a reasonable correction rather than a radical break. This careful messaging made it harder for the EU to respond aggressively without appearing heavy-handed. Brussels had to balance firmness with caution, aware that punishing Denmark too harshly could backfire politically. At the same time, doing nothing risked sending the message that EU rules are optional. This delicate balancing act is one of the biggest challenges facing the EU today. The panic, therefore, was not loud or dramatic, but quiet and strategic, reflected in emergency meetings, urgent legal analyses, and intense diplomatic exchanges. EU lawyers began examining the implications of the Danish move, searching for ways to respond within existing legal frameworks. Diplomats worked behind the scenes to de-escalate tensions and prevent the situation from becoming a public showdown. Publicly, EU statements remained measured, emphasizing dialogue and cooperation rather than confrontation. But beneath the calm language, there was real concern about the long-term consequences. The Danish decision also came at a particularly sensitive moment for the EU. The bloc is facing global economic pressures, competition from major powers, and ongoing security challenges. In this context, any sign of internal division is seen as a strategic vulnerability. Denmark's move reminded EU leaders that internal cohesion cannot be taken for granted. It also highlighted the limits of Brussels' influence when national governments feel confident enough to push back. This confidence did not come from nowhere. Denmark's strong economy, stable institutions, and high levels of public trust gave its leaders room to maneuver. Unlike more fragile states, Denmark could afford to challenge aspects of EU policy without fearing immediate economic or political fallout. This reality made EU officials even more uneasy because it showed that resistance does not only come from weaker or marginalized members. If a country like Denmark feels empowered to act independently, others may eventually follow. The situation also sparked debate among EU citizens more broadly. Some saw Denmark's decision as a healthy assertion of democracy and national choice. Others worried that it undermined the collective strength needed to tackle shared challenges. These competing interpretations reflect a deeper identity crisis within the EU. Is the Union primarily a cooperative framework of sovereign states, or a more integrated political entity with shared authority? Denmark's move reignited this unresolved question. For years, the EU has tried to advance integration gradually, hoping to avoid sharp conflicts. But moments like this force the issue into the open. They expose the tension between national sovereignty and supranational governance in a way that cannot be easily smoothed over. In Denmark, the public debate became a mirror of the wider European debate. Supporters of the decision argued that it restored balance and respected democratic choice. Critics warned that it risked isolating Denmark and weakening the EU as a whole. This division was not extreme, but it was significant enough to show how complex the issue had become. The EU reaction was also shaped by recent experiences with other member states. Past confrontations had shown that aggressive responses often hardened opposition rather than resolving disputes. As a result, Brussels approached Denmark with caution, seeking compromise rather than escalation. However, compromise itself carries risks, especially if it is perceived as inconsistency. EU leaders know that every exception, every special arrangement, makes the system more complicated and potentially less credible. Denmark already has several opt-outs, and adding another layer could reinforce perceptions of a tous, bede Europe. This idea worries policymakers who fear a fragmented union with uneven commitments. The Danish decision thus became a focal point for broader fears about the EU future direction. It forced leaders to confront uncomfortable realities about public support, political legitimacy, and the limits of integration. The panic was not about losing Denmark, but about losing control of the narrative. Once the story becomes one of national pushback versus distant bureaucracy, the EU struggles to win hearts and minds. Denmark's calm and measured approach made that narrative even harder to counter. There was no dramatic rhetoric, no threats of exit, just a firm assertion of national preference. This subtlety made the challenge more profound. It showed that resistance to EU authority does not always come in loud or extreme forms. Sometimes it comes quietly, through legal and political choices that slowly reshape the balance of power. For the EU, responding to such challenges requires more than legal tools. It requires rebuilding trust and demonstrating relevance to everyday citizens. The Danish case highlighted how fragile that trust can be, even in countries that have long been seen as model members. As discussions continued, some EU thinkers began to see the situation as an opportunity rather than just a threat. They argued that Denmark's move could spark necessary reforms and honest conversations about the future of the Union. Instead of suppressing dissent, the EU could use it to adapt and evolve. Whether this optimistic view will prevail remains uncertain. What is clear is that the Danish decision has already left a mark. It has changed the tone of internal EU discussions and sharpened awareness of underlying tensions. The panic may fade from headlines, but the questions it raised will not disappear so easily. Denmark has shown that even within a highly integrated system, national agency still matters. For the EU, the challenge now is to reconcile that reality with its ambition for unity and collective action. The coming months and years will reveal whether the EU can turn this moment of anxiety into a moment of renewal, or whether it will struggle to contain the forces that Denmark's decision has helped bring to the surface. In the end, this story is not just about Denmark or the EU. It is about the future of cooperation in a world where citizens demand both security and sovereignty. It is about finding a balance between shared rules and national choice. And it is about whether complex political systems can adapt to changing expectations without losing their core purpose. That is why the EU reaction felt like panic. Not because everything is falling apart, but because the ground beneath long-held assumptions is shifting. And when that happens, even the strongest institutions are forced to stop, reflect, and rethink their path forward.